Hello, Gaston County. Welcome to episode number 123 of Gaston's Great, a podcast highlighting some of the great things happening in and around Gaston County. I'm your host, Stephen Long. We're coming to you once again. We're going to call it the intergalactic headquarters of GSM Services this week, right here in downtown Gastonia. We are shifting gears slightly again for this episode as we are highlighting an individual who is involved in serving not just our local community, but has had and continues to have an impact on a broader community as well. I am thrilled and honored to have Jennifer Davis on the podcast today and looking forward to hearing about all she has done by serving others. Jennifer, it's great to have you on and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, this is exciting.
I have arrived.
Well, if this is your opinion of arriving, maybe we need to talk. We need to raise that bar just a little, maybe, Jennifer. So, as usual, we're going to get right to it. So, Jennifer, is a question I always ask to start. Just to begin with, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Anything you'd like to share before we get in maybe to some a little more specifics.
So, I tell people I'm old. I am, because I've forgotten much more than I remember. Born and raised in Gaston County. Actually, born and raised in Gastonia, right down the street on North York Street. I was the youngest of 6 children.
Okay.
The oldest one next to me died at birth. So the 4 oldest, there was 9 years between me and the brother next to me. So a lot of people thought I was an only child. Graduated from Highland. We all did. Had the same teachers. And decided when I graduated, well, since I was the youngest and my parents were still here, my brothers and my sister all moved away because at that time there weren't many opportunities here for blacks. So one went to Atlanta, one went to Massachusetts, 2 went to Pennsylvania, and I stayed home. I went to school at UNC Greensboro, married a man I had known since 4th grade.
Oh, wow.
But we were friends all our lives. Our first date was our senior prom. We got married secretly, although I still think my mama probably knows it. But I was a junior in college. We got married secretly, and then we had to have a wedding 2 years after that when I finished. So that was because I thought my mama didn't know we were married. Got married the weekend that Martin Luther King was assassinated.
Oh, wow.
Had an interracial wedding. I mean, I had my brothers and sister, white friends. We were all here. And it was a peaceful weekend. And one thing I remember is my dad saying, my daughter's getting married and I can't even get a drink of liquor. Well, you didn't have ABC stores then. We had liquor by the drink in Gaston County before it was ever legal. He couldn't get him liquor that weekend. It was really funny.
So was he saying he needed it the weekend his daughter got married?
Yeah, I think he was trying to get over the money he had spent for that.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So my 2 older brothers are dead. One died in 2008, one in 2009, but my sister and the next oldest brother both of them moved back here.
Okay.
So we live within 15 minutes of each other. And they're 9 and 10 years older than me.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of unique.
Mm-hmm, it is.
Our youngest is 5 years. It's not quite 9 or 10, but there is that gap does make for a different experience. For sure, because there are people that probably know just her that think that she's an only child as well,
exactly
because of that age difference.
So Highland was the school for African Americans, and all my life I was raised in a segregated society, but I didn't know, it just was what it was. So I knew that there was something different out there. And I wanted to bond with women. That's one of my key issues, or something that's very important to me, women's issues. And I wanted to step outside that comfort zone that I had been in, that black comfort zone, because I'd been protected and taken care of and all my life. So I chose a college that was all female, and it was women's college in Greensboro. The year I went, it became co-ed. And it is now the UNC, it's UNC Greensboro.
Right.
So it was great. There were 4,000 students there at that time. 40 of us were black, and 40 men were commuting students.
So 1%. Did I do that math right? 4,000.
Yeah, that's about 1%.
Sorry, engineering there.
Yeah.
And just on a quick side note, UNC Greensboro put a beat down on my Wolfpack baseball team last night. It was like 18-3 or something. Sorry.
Well, we had no sports when I was there. It was all academic. So.
Yeah. So another quick connection is I went to school with Jennifer's daughter, and then coached, oddly enough, her grandson. That's been probably 8 or 9 years ago. I don't remember. I looked it up, but yeah. So there is, and then we have cross paths in community work and so many things, other things over the last 15 to 20 years since I started getting more involved in community stuff. So.
So you just told him, I'm old enough to be your mama. Yeah.
For the record, that's not what I said. That's what Jennifer extrapolated out of that.
I'm old enough to be your mama. Okay.
Okay, well, let's close this one out here since I have inserted my foot as usual. All right, so why did we want to have Jennifer on? There's so many reasons. Again, this is a podcast about Gaston County. Why is Gaston County so great? If you were listening, I mentioned, but Jennifer has a much broader impact than just Gaston County with her work and her involvement. But let's kind of just go there. Kind of, you shared a little bit of personal stuff. Let's kind of, maybe can you expand that a little bit? Talk about just what you're doing, the community stuff you've been involved with. But because I think your career, profession, so to speak, is kind of intertwined with all that. Unlike maybe some professions, it's so connected with what you do. Just so anything you'd like to share, going back to when, I don't necessarily like the word calling, because to me that just seems sometimes too spiritual. But because I now kind of view what I'm doing here at GSM is, because when I first started here, I was like, I'm not staying here. I'm not coming here. This is good for Joel, but I'm not doing it. Well, that was 30 years ago, and here I still am. But I do have an opportunity to impact so many families, so many people, my community involvement. But I don't know that that's necessarily calling. Calling for me is more my family and things I'm involved with maybe elsewhere. But anyway, I kind of got off track there. But kind of just anything you'd like to share there, because we have another reason for this is there might be somebody listening who is thinking, well, I feel like there's something else I should be doing. I'm feeling that pull to do something else in the community, and that's why I love these conversations with individuals as compared to just, I shouldn't say just, but some of the organizations we've had on. There's a slight difference there, in my opinion, on that, even though some of those organizations were started by individuals who said they had a calling and I'm going to start this organization. So does that question make any sense, or is that just
it does
a
make
typical
sense.
Redneck question from Stephen?
And I don't know that I've ever said it's a calling.
Yeah.
But the question that I have learned to ask myself, and I have asked people, I do it all the time in classes, what is your why?
Yeah.
Why do you do what you do? And because how you do it, how you determine what you're going to do is based on why you're involved in something to begin with. So I discovered my why when I was 59, but it happened.
So last year.
Yeah, last year.
I kind of recovered from that other comment.
Yeah, you recovered. But it was planted in me when I was 15 or 16, and I didn't know it. So I tell a story all the time about how it had to be 63, 62, 63. It was before the Civil Rights Act was passed in 64. So I was a student in high school, and a group of us had gone to a student council convention in Durham. I say it's in Durham. I'm pretty sure it was in Durham. And at lunchtime, we went to a Woolworths to eat. Yeah, you know where I'm going with this. I can't remember how we got there, how we got home, but I remember what happened when we went to Woolworths. I go prancing in, and we sit down at the lunch counter, and I I love a good hamburger. I still do. And you can tell I've eaten a few of those.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah, just hamburger, lettuce, tomato, onions, and mustard.
I know I'm doing for lunch now that Jennifer mentioned.
Yeah, I just mentioned that and made you hungry. So I don't know. There were 6 or 7 of us, and we sat down at the lunch counter. In a few minutes, the young lady who was kind of over our group, she was also a student, came and said, "We have to go." And so me with my rebellious self said, "Why? We hadn't eaten. We got to go back. We got to go do this, and I'm hungry." And yada yada yada. The hamburgers, by the way, were 50 cents at the time. And she said, "Jennifer, we have to go." So we got up, and I'm angry. I'm hungry, and as we're standing outside and I'm looking inside, it hit me. I remember what the gentleman said to her as I was reading the menu. He said, "Not this year, maybe next." So I'm standing outside that store, and I'm looking in. I can shop there, but I can't eat there. And at that time, it hit me that everybody in there was white, that they all stopped talking when we walked in. I remember the deafening silence. And I made up my mind then, as I was hurt and angry, that as much as it would be up to me, I didn't want anybody else to feel what I felt that day. I wanted people to be good with who they are, because those people didn't know me and I didn't know them.
Sure.
But because of what I looked like, they made a decision, and I couldn't get a 50-cent hamburger. So that stuck with me.
I bet.
And then in 2007, 8, somewhere back in there, well, whenever I was 59 years old, I'd have to go do the math for that. I was invited to be a part of a group called American Leadership Forum. It's a national organization. They gather people regionally who are in leadership positions. And we spend a year in a cohort group meeting in different places. The first meeting, we had to introduce ourselves. You had 7 minutes to get up and introduce yourself. And I looked around at the people. Now, I didn't know these people, and most of them were white. They were strangers, but we were about to go to the Pisgah National Forest on a camping trip. Now, I tell folks, I am not an outdoor girl. You can tell that. I had never lived alone. I didn't like camping, but we had to introduce ourselves, and we're going off to the woods for 5 days. And
that's good.
That was kind of scary. And what came out of my mouth, because everybody else had some kind of prop or a picture or something, I didn't have anything but my mouth, and that's probably most what I've had all my life anyway. I've always got the mouth. I stood up, and here's what came out of my mouth. "My name is Jennifer Davis, and I'm an angry black woman." And everybody in that room went, I thought, where did that come from? And I told that story. That had stuck with me from the time I was 16 till I was 59, and that's how it came out. So I embraced it, and people heard about it. And your brother invited me to breakfast one day because he said, I was running for office, and he said, "I hear you introducing yourself as an angry black woman." And I said, "I am, but did they tell you the rest of the story? It's not about my race, it's not about my gender, it's about my attitude."
You mean context matters?
Yeah, context matters. It's about my attitude. And I just think everybody ought to be angry enough about something to go do something about it. So that's what has driven me. And so I ask people all the time, what's your why? Because I do believe your why is your calling.
Do you discover when you ask those questions, do you often find that there's a percentage of people who don't know?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think they know, but they haven't probed it.
Okay.
And if you ask them that and make them think about it, they'll come up with it. If you give them time to think about it. Sometimes it's on the spur of the moment, but my goal is always to get people to go away and think about your why. Because if you're involved in something and you don't feel like you're adding value or contributing, or it's not rewarding for you, you're in the wrong place. You're in the wrong place.
Yeah, I like to use the concept of if you don't feel like we're making progress or something is happening to move us
Are you making a difference?
Toward whatever that why or vision is.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I do believe you'll feel a sense of peace. Now, it might be an aggravating situation. It might be something that's truly difficult. But I believe you'll feel a sense of peace about being where you are. So I started asking people that all the time in 2016 after the riots in Charlotte. And I did it first with police because in this day and time, and since 2016, police they're not all bad.
No.
But the majority of them are good.
Yeah.
The majority of them are good. You're going to have, in any profession, you're
correct.
going to have
Yep.
people who are bad.
Anywhere. Yep.
But they're the most visible thing. So I started asking them why. And the question I asked, the first class we had after the riots, after things had calmed down, was this. I asked people, I said, okay, tell us who you are, what you do, and why you do it. And then fill in this prompt. This past year has been blank, and I feel blank. So if you catch people, that question will work anytime, anywhere. This past year has been blank, and I feel blank. You can capture a lot in how they fill in those blanks because they're in the moment. They're in that moment.
So if we could just pause 1 second. So you're talking about classes and these things that you're doing. So can you give us maybe a quick 30-second of what exactly is that you do? Okay, because we kind of jumped into but it was the context was great to lead up to your why,
right,
from that 15 or 16 years old until last year when you were 59. So kind of what is it that you're doing since that turning 59, or I guess I'm assuming there was some of that beforehand, but so our listeners know how you find yourself in front of the police as an example, having these classes.
Well, that was accidental, but
or whomever,
I was an English major, and I always had the idea that I wanted to work in an office. So I went to work for IBM.
Okay.
And I wanted to go to work at one or two places, either the government or IBM, because I heard it was hard to get fired from either one. So I went to work I got a job at IBM the weekend I got married. And I majored in English. And I got into human resources, and I loved it. Yeah. I just loved it. So what I do now, I retired in 93. I was blessed to get early retirement. I retired in 93, started a business, which is a human resource consulting business. Yep. So I do team building, leadership development. I don't like the word diversity, but that's, because people have just kind of bastardized the word.
Sure.
So I prefer being culturally competent because we're not, in the South, diversity was always about being black and white, and there's just so much more than that.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's what I do, and I just try to help people, just give them education. I don't call it diversity training because you don't train people to be diverse. We are diverse by divine design. You educate people. You train dogs, but you educate people. Yeah. And we can educate people about each other. We can talk and we can have conversations, and you find out that we have more in common than we do different. So that's what I do. If you
pay attention and listen, that's exactly right.
Exactly.
So I'm gonna stop you there one more time before we get back to some of the stuff. So give a little context and why should we listen to Jennifer Davis about all this? Well, I'm going to read a couple things that I discovered. She has consulted with multiple police departments, including Charlotte-Mecklenburg. She's been on the Gaston County Board of Education, was the first African-American chair in 2002, former director of discipleship ministry for Western North Carolina Conference of the United Methodist Church, first layperson to hold this position, Silver Service Board for the Gaston County Police Department, Gaston College Board of Trustees, 2021 Athena Leadership Award winner, co-authored 3 books. I'd be interested to talk about that. Certified diversity consultant, certified 5-factor personality assessment consultant, and motivational speaker. So that's a lot.
It is.
All right. But I read that I don't like the word validate, but it gives frankly, some credibility to who you are, along with the obvious credibility part, is your life experience, right? And to your point, everybody's life experience is different because it would be, as an example, it would be impossible for me I can have some empathy maybe, but not really relate to like your experience at Woolworth. I can't, right? And so that's why, so those are just a few reasons why. And then actually there were some other things listed, but I only have so much room on the page here, Jennifer.
And I'm only 59.
That's right. So you've done, well, never mind. I was getting ready to say something that my wife was like, what in the world are you getting ready to say, dummy? So with that said, it does seem like, I don't know when the inflection point was. There's been an inflection point somewhere where, to your point about that diversity word, or our society becoming more aware of whatever you want to call this. And so take us back now then maybe to some of the work you've been doing, and maybe even comment on some of these other things you've been involved with. But, I want to specifically just let you keep talking about what brought you to where you are today and the high point of your life sitting here in Gaston's great, podcast.
It is.
Yeah.
So if you notice, everything I do and or have done involves people.
Right.
And I have tried to be, if you invite me to the table, I ain't gonna shut up. So I have tried to be sometimes a voice of reason, but sometimes the bomb in the room. Because I don't want to avoid, and I don't want people to avoid the hard conversations.
And we like to do that.
We want to pretend. We want to fake it. And we're never going to resolve the issues we see in our culture today if we don't talk about it. Yeah. So I learned that by accident, and I just kind of carried it forward from there. When I worked for the IBM company, we used to do a survey every year that measured morale, employee morale. Now, organizations don't like to talk about employee morale. Right. But if you're going to get the best from the people who work for you, you have to care about them and how they're feeling and where they are in their lives. And at IBM, we called diversity work-life balance. And that's still what it is today. Right. It's just magnified. We've got so much more to deal with now than we did years ago. Mm-hmm. So my boss he had a quality problem with the product. This is when we had the plant in Charlotte. And I was working as the advisor to the plant manager. Great man, loved him. So he said, I believe the morale of the employees is tied to the quality of the product that we're producing. I can't prove it, but I just believe that. If people don't feel good about coming to work, they're not going to give us the best, and we're going to be shipping stuff out the door that's not good, that's going to be coming back. And the quality rate was down. I mean, we were shipping out stuff and getting maybe 20-25% of it back.
Oh, that's a big number.
That's a big number. So he gave me the task, and there were 3 of us that worked on it to find out what the issue was. And so the 3 of us sat down. It was me, my boss, and a colleague. And again, I wasn't working directly for the plant manager, but I was his advisor. And we said, what are we going to do? How do you do this? We had some key questions on an employee survey that measured morale. It was about salary, your manager, the kind of work you do, stuff like that. So we finally said, you know what? Here's how we're going to do it. We had our administrative assistant. We called them secretaries back then. That's how I started as a secretary. And we told her just pull some names at random. Go into the employee list, pull out some names at random, invite them to a meeting and order some donuts and stuff from the cafeteria, because we had our own cafeteria. And we prepared a list of questions intended to get at those 5 direct questions. The first question we asked was, how is your morale? And we never had to ask another question. They just took off with it. They answered almost every question on there. We found out about managers. We found out about issues that were going on in the plant, some of which we don't want to talk about these days. They shared things to us knowing that they trusted the people who were conducting the sessions. And we could go from there and create teams of people to address those issues. So we handed it to the employees. If you want to be involved and you want to work on this, sign up. And before we were done, I think we did 14 of those sessions in 2 weeks. We had more data than we ever thought we'd collect. And there were people who were stopping me in the cafeteria saying, how do we get invited to one of these sessions? So what I learned was you feed them and let them talk, and they'll tell you. And if they feel safe and secure in the environment, you're okay. So now, the way we do that, the classes that I teach at Charlotte are mandatory, so everybody has to come through our class. And, of course, anybody dreads mandatory classes. I don't like to be told where to go and what to do. So now at the end of those sessions, we collect anonymous feedback. Tell us what was good, tell us what was not so good, and tell us how we can improve. And people will tell you a lot of things. We try to make the classes fun and engaging. I don't tell people, and I team teach with my colleague Dwayne, I don't tell people what to think and feel. It's not for me to tell you what you should think or feel, because we don't have the same background. But I try to help them think and feel and do it in a safe place. So I tell them it's a Vegas environment. What you say in here doesn't get out unless one of y'all goes and tells it. So I care about what you say and not who says it. And I sit down with the chief every few months or so to just review some of that data. I collect that anonymous feedback on Post-it notes, and I read every single one of them. Every single one.
So what have you gleaned about people, relationship, the work world, and what one or two things you've gleaned from doing this over the years that just anything that stands out?
Everybody wants to be heard.
Yeah.
But most people don't want to listen because everybody wants to talk. So we have to take the time to stop and listen, meet people where they are. That's the first thing. And you have to listen to understand, not listen to respond.
Yes.
And too often that's what we're doing. You're talking and I'm forming my answer.
That's why I was a very average salesperson.
Why?
I had formulated I was waiting for them to be quiet so I could show them that I knew the answer to the question they asked or the statement they said at the beginning of the conversation. So everything else was I was waiting for them to be quiet so I could respond.
So you didn't hear what they said.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And we miss a lot of things that way.
Yeah, listening is a skill that, around here at GSM, they get tired of hearing this from me, but I talk about God gave us 2 ears and one mouth. And
for a reason.
Yeah. We should listen twice as much as we speak.
Exactly.
So yeah, I appreciate that. That's a good one.
So I also learned this. Everybody has a story, and they ought to be in a place where they can tell it, in a safe place to tell it. So I've got a story. I mean, I just shared a lot of it with you. And I've had a lot of personal tragedy. I lost my husband and my son to suicide. I've been very candid about that in sharing that. And it took me 5 years to process my son's death because both of them just came out of the blue. But in 5 years, I processed his death in my head, and I finally put it in that book, which I brought you one.
Well, thank you. I'm always reading something. I'm always trying to get the team here to read something. Y'all probably get sick of that too, don't you?
Well, I love to read. That's my favorite thing to do.
Yeah, I'm always reading. Matter of fact, right now I'm reading 2 books, 2 devotionals, and then the Bible in chronological order this year. So
I've done that. You know what?
It's
every now and then, from Genesis to Revelation, and I did 2 Bible studies a week for 10 years. So yeah, I love Bible study. That's the
but I'm struggling a little bit through Deuteronomy right now. All the rules.
Wait till you get the numbers.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to.
I read through that really quickly.
I'll go when I'm ready to go to sleep. I'll read through that one. But you got to struggle through some of that stuff to get to the good stuff, right? That's part of the journey on so many things.
And every now and then you got to go find yourself in the Bible.
Yeah.
There's a story. You're in the Bible somewhere.
It's interesting. Just yesterday, I said this with one of our team members here. We were talking about something happened, and I made the comment, we just have to surrender ourselves, right? Because sometimes that's the only way for anything to make sense. My devotional yesterday was about surrendering. I was like,
That is no accident.
no, it's not.
That is no accident. That is God.
Yeah, how many times on those, even we said this on this podcast before, I'm like, yeah, I don't want to hear it. He's talking, but I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, I don't want to hear it.
I might have to go do something.
He's going to get your attention now.
So, okay, see, you got to keep us in line. We'll be going down this rabbit hole, Naomi. It'll be 3:00. It's like it's a little before 11 on. We're recording this. What's today? Wednesday. It's the 13th.
Yes, the 13th.
Not the 14th, as somebody tried to say earlier. So all this, you've done so many things. I'm sure you've interacted with so many people and heard so many things and like you were talking about, collecting so much information, not just before you retired from IBM, but I bet even more since then. Is there something that you would say, whether it's work, professional, personal, career, whatever, that you're most proud of accomplishing with community work, or something you've seen happen and change? You know what I mean? Is there something you're really proud of through your professional or community service, or anything that comes to mind?
Couple of things. When I served on the Gaston County School Board, I served with my classmate, Ed Sadler.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know if there's another. We graduated together. He, my husband, and I, Judge Jingles, we all graduated together. So I don't know if anybody's ever examined that thing where you have two people who came out of a segregated school system to lead the consolidated school system. So I was really proud of the time that I served with him, and he was, and I was his chair. I mean, that was great. I am also really proud of receiving the 2011 MLK Unity Award.
Okay.
Because who noticed what I was doing? I mean, for all the years that I worked for IBM, they told you where to go, when to go, how to go, and I didn't have the time to invest in the community. So when I retired, I made a conscious decision that I'm going to do something in Gaston County. I'm going to be involved in my community, because I believe you ought to be involved where you choose to live. And so that's why I started the business here. And I'm proud of the fact that my husband and myself, our kids, and our grandkids all went to Gaston County schools.
Yeah. And we're the same.
Right here.
Joel and I went to Gaston County schools. All 5 of our kids went through Gaston County schools as well. And I was in a class that was super fortunate in the timing, because I had Ed Sadler was my principal for 2 years at Greer Junior High.
Yeah.
And then all 3 years
at Ashbrook. Mm-hmm.
And then years later, I joined the, I guess the first time was I was on the Community Foundation board, and I walked into my first board meeting, and Dr. Sadler's in there.
Isn't that amazing?
And I was thinking, everything came back to him. I said, because back in, I remember in high school, junior high school, he spoke. It was like God was speaking to you, and I mean that in the
oh yeah,
in a positive sense. But the way that he treated me, because in my mind I'm still his student.
Oh yeah.
But he treated me on that board. It made me feel like, well, maybe I do belong here, because I was intimidated. Kind of like the first time I joined my Rotary Club. I mean, the people in there, there was just, Barbara Voorhees.
Yeah.
Oh God, I mean, just so many, and of course Barbara's still involved, and it's, in that rule in Rotary, you got to call everybody their first name. I struggled with that for a while with a lot of people. Caroline Garrison, Jit Garland. I mean, these people who I considered to be these community giants, and that I don't belong in this room with them. But Dr. Sauer was a great example of, he made me feel like he was proud that a former student he was seeing on the Community Foundation board with him.
And he was sincere about that.
Absolutely.
He was sincere about
that. I absolutely agree. So that was just a kind of that full circle.
So I was
that was
like
so
you.
Terrific.
See, I was very much like you. I'd get invited to these things. I'd be involved with people that are so important in the community, and I'm thinking, okay, little old me, what? But I'm here. I'm going to show up, and I'm not going to be quiet. So no,
frankly, when we exchanged those messages, right, and you said I would love to come to class, I was like, Jennifer Davis on our podcast?
I love calling in just listening to your jokes. I mean,
Well, yeah, maybe we should do a whole podcast just nothing but that.
that would be good.
It would, we'd have 3 listeners. It'd be me, my wife, and my mother.
Oh no. I love it.
Well, again, I appreciate you sharing that because again, I know there's so what, and I knew that about the MLK Unity work because I'm still on the Gaston Gather board and have been 8 or 9 years now because I just think that's a great group and they've done a lot and done a lot at Ask Me. And that's another thing, right? It happens in the community. Sometimes it just takes somebody asking, right?
Yeah,
To get involved in something.
And I remember when I was asked to be a part of the major cities. I think Jenny Stultz and I, and in fact, she and I sat down and came up with that term, citywide city pride. Actually, that came from my daughter because Jenny and I were struggling trying to figure out what would our theme be. And so I called my daughter, who's really creative, and asked her stuff. And between she and I talking, we came up with that citywide city pride. That was 1990 something or other. That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago.
The All-American City thing you're talking about? Or yeah.
Not the last one, but the one before that.
The first one, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I've been around a while. I'm an extrovert, first of all. So I get my energy from being around people and involved with people. And I like my private time too. I don't get as much of that anymore. But I just like being involved. And I like stirring the pot if I can.
Yeah, I've never noticed that at all. See, I'm an introvert by definition, and so like doing this podcast wears me out. Hanging around with people like you, that just wears me out, Jennifer.
But I would be so energized. This just gives me energy.
But I've been intentional about learning. Just gosh, and I've just been so fortunate to, in the last 20 years especially, interacting with so many great people. That's why I'm so optimistic and so positive about Gaston County. I think there's been a specific change in my view the last 8 to 10 years especially. I don't know what happened. I mean, maybe it was just the part of it maybe was the whole Gold Gaston campaign I think helped, but it's just people leading the community started, I think, saying things like asking questions like, why not us, as opposed to, before it was, well, we're Gaston County, we can't have nice things in Gaston County, or whatever. I mean, that attitude just seems to have changed, in my opinion. And
I think it's changed, and I think one of the things is, we have dwelled, and we do this as people. We dwell too much on the negative.
Yeah. And
if you dwell on that, that's what you repeat. That's what plays in your head, and that's what you repeat. Well, I'm not going to, you can say that, and you do that. That ain't me. I'm not doing that. So I'm going to go the opposite way, because you have to think how you want to feel.
Yeah.
If I want to feel good, then I got to think good.
If I had known that when I was younger, gosh, I didn't really learn that till the last, 15 years or so, when I started reading and really paying attention to who I was hanging around.
Exactly.
But the mind is such a powerful
it is
thing. I mean, because before that, and especially when I was younger, I was just doing my thing day to day. There wasn't a whole lot of intentionality to it. It was tasks, and I wasn't thinking about when I come through like this door every day at GSM, as an example. I stop and think, okay, my outlook and attitude is going to impact every single person here today. So if I come in here acting like, whatever, and of course I also used to not think that how can I impact people around me, right? You know what I mean? I don't know if that was a self-esteem thing or it was just what difference does it make? I mean, I'm not impacting anybody, but you have an impact, but are you going to be intentional? It's going to be positive, negative, indifferent. So it's better, in my view, to be intentional about it and become aware of that impact that you're having.
So you have to be intentional about how you're going to show up and where you're going to show up, because you think nobody's looking at you.
Yeah.
But my mom used to say this, somebody's always watching you. So you have to be very careful about that. I think one of the things that has stunned me, that little boy you coached, Martin,
Yeah.
he's an old soul. My daughter says he's been here twice before. He says things to me sometimes like, and I just have to go, where did that come from? Because it's deep
Yeah.
and it's thoughtful, but it just comes right out. You know, and he said things to me that his coach has shared with the team, and it resonated with him because it's stuff that I have said to him. So sometimes I'm just caught like, okay. But people, somebody's always watching you and they're listening. So if you're an introvert, introverts have to think to talk. Yep. Extroverts, we have to talk to think. So I will say to people, okay, if that didn't come out right, I'm sorry, but okay, we're going to be okay because I think out loud, and then I say, oops, did that make sense? And you know, it's just the way we process. But we need all of those people in our culture, in our society, and in our workplace. And we have to honor those differences.
Absolutely, yeah.
We need to honor those differences. So
yeah, just here. Is it fair to say that Joel might be a little more of an extrovert compared to me?
He is. Just a little bit.
So, yeah, I think I call myself the processor. He'll say something and be like,
but you need that.
and he'll be like, I'm waiting.
But you need that.
Yes. Yeah, we're a little different personalities. It's interesting, too, because, you know, same two parents.
But you balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the most part, we balance.
You will.
So, yeah, this is exactly the kind of conversations I wanted to have with you, Jim, because I've heard you speak before, and I've come to that place where, well, let me back up. I was going to say, you said something a second ago, and I think when I came to that realization about people are watching is when my son is 25 now, so somewhere he was 5 or 6, I was like, oh, he is watching me more than he's listening, so I better get my act together. And that was a tough realization for me, because I want to be able to just, you know, do as I say, not as I do.
Exactly.
Yeah, that doesn't work. But I've come to that realization about self-awareness and intentionality, and just the opportunities to learn from every interaction, and every person you come in contact with is an opportunity for them to teach you something.
Absolutely.
And that's when I say, man, I wish I had known that when I was 20. Because so many things you mentioned, like Martin, hearing things from his coaches and pass on. You know, I heard the same stuff, but I bet it didn't click till 15 years later. You know.
So it's interesting because Martin and I, he's dictating to me his thoughts for his college essays. Okay, so I'm typing. And that's one of the things he said. He said, until I realized that what I heard, I could apply. He didn't say it quite that way.
Right.
He said, once I thought about what was being said to me and I applied it, I realized all I got to do is put the work in and see the results. And I thought, wow. I mean, that's pretty deep for an 18-year-old.
Yeah, I sure did have. I mean, that wasn't even on anywhere in my world at 18.
Not
at
see,
all.
one of the things he did last year was in preparing for basketball season, he created his own workout plan. Last summer, he created his own diet plan. Martin he hadn't met a piece of chicken that he doesn't like.
And blame for that.
And he lost something like 40 pounds or something like that.
Wow.
And so, I'm watching the change in him, and I said, well, what made you decide to do this? And he's going to kill me for saying this. He said, Shama, they call me Shama. He said, I got tired of holding my stomach in everywhere I went. I said, well, I should have been working out what you do.
Yeah.
But then he realized, he said, I felt better. I knew this, but now I felt better. And then people noticed it and were complimenting. So people notice.
Well, I think it's fair to say that if, I mentioned before we started recording that I was over at the Huss Forest View game for lots of different reasons. One of them, though, was to see Troy and Martin and Troy's son playing. And you know what? If I hadn't have known he was on the team, I don't know. I would have recognized him from when because it's been a few years back when we had that dominant team at First United Methodist Youth League, which was a lot of fun. You know, so what? For the sake of your day,
I'm good.
What haven't I asked? What else, that I should have asked? What else would you like to discuss or talk about Gaston County yourself? Or maybe we've covered, because this is knowing enough about you. I assume this is where this would go. And so it's given, our listeners a good taste of your experience, what you've done. There's also a little, I don't like the word redemption, but you've dealt with some things that not many people do. I've never dealt with, I've lost my dad. We dealt with this wacky shooting thing here that was just so crazy, but it still doesn't rise to the personal level that you've dealt with. But everybody, deals with, something, right? I mean, if you live long enough, you're going to deal with some type of tragedy or death or loss. I don't like that word death, but loss of some sort. And so what do you do then, right? What do you lean on? And so I appreciate you sharing some of that, because I wasn't going to go there, but I assumed you would. You would mention it, because you know what? Because you can, something else that you shared, that it's such a public thing from you, because you can go online and find so many great stories related to that where you shared that. But anything else that I haven't asked, or something you'd like to share before we kind of move into this?
So here's what I would like people to think about for Gaston County. I love this community, and I would have, IBM used to stand for, people would say it stood for I've been moved. And I made a decision that I didn't want to get moved, and I was blessed not to have to move. I am one of 3 people that worked in Charlotte that never got moved, that didn't get moved. They were hired in Charlotte and retired in Charlotte. But it's because I started in a branch office that was there, and then they built this manufacturing plant that is no longer there. And I became the 7th person in human resources, transferred from the branch to human resources. I was the first recruiter and placement counselor. So that allowed me to stay here. And I had opportunities to leave, but I didn't want to. I was the only child that stayed here. My parents were still living, and and then I had that little boyfriend, so that I was married. He would have had to get up and move, and I didn't want to do that. So when I retired and made that intentional decision that I'm going to get more involved in Gaston County, I went to a meeting, and they were talking about stress management, women in stress management, and I was stunned, because I'd done that 10 years ago in Charlotte.
Gotcha.
And now we're just talking about it and where have we been? Stress is not new.
Yeah.
And why have we not been talking about it for women? So what I realized was we're a little slow to make change. But eventually we do. It's very intentional, it's very deliberate, and there's only 2 kinds of change. It's the kind you choose to make and the kind you don't. And some of the things that we have needed to do, we haven't done. We're being forced to do.
Right. I agree.
And so there's a book that we teach a module called Shift Happens.
Oh yeah.
Shift Happens, and it's all about change. And
Will Current shared that book with me, actually.
Yeah, and there's a story in there about how the guy describes resisting change as trying to fight a rip current. You're going to die. You're going to die. So you got to find a way to navigate through that.
Yeah, that's one of the few certainties, right, is that change is happening.
Change is going to happen. Yeah. And then the other thing I would tell you, and I think most people know this about me, is I am a person of deep faith. I am not a strong woman, but I am a woman of strong faith. And that's what helps me survive. God whips my tail a lot.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that, Jennifer. Now, we've got a couple of questions we'll finish up with that to close out that are similar, but something we do here every episode is I'll make our guest endure these Gaston County related questions. And I typically come up with a name for these, and we're going to call this the UNCG, before there were sports there, speed round of questions.
Okay. Oh God, this.
You ready?
Good. Okay.
And, I mean, you're from Gastonia, so these are all right down your alley.
Okay.
Favorite Tony's ice cream flavor?
Strawberry.
Ooh, that's my son's. Sundrop or Cheerwine?
Sundrop.
Okay. How about favorite outdoor activity in Gaston County? A favorite park or something you'd like to do around Gaston County?
Martha Rivers.
This is the most important question. UNC, Duke, or NC State?
Is that 3 teams you just named?
It is.
Carolina.
Well, it's 3 colleges.
Go Heels.
Give me something.
Tar Heels. I hate it.
What is something very few people know about you? There might be nothing. You're the way
I was getting ready to say, I don't
your
know.
extroverted self. There may be nothing.
There may be nothing that people don't know about me.
Because you already blurted out that you and Joel had breakfast about that, because I knew that one.
The angry black woman.
Yeah.
Well,
That's good, actually.
did you know that I want everybody to have the attitude of an angry black woman? So when I leave here today, y'all are angry black women.
Okay, absolutely. I
Do
got
something.
you.
There you go.
I'll make sure to tell my wife when I get home. You mentioned a couple books, but you mentioned Shift Happens. Is there any other book or blog or article, something that you follow, or a book or something you would recommend to our listeners?
Oh yeah, I got a whole list of those. So I like Patrick Lencioni's, and I'm thinking
I'm a huge fan.
Lencioni.
I am, yes.
Read The Advantage.
I've read it, yeah. It's great.
Used that. I used that to direct some leadership teams and people who were in crisis. I was working with a police department in California that was in crisis, and I modeled our retreat after that. Now that was scary because they took me out in the woods somewhere to do this retreat. But what's his name? Rick Warren's The Purpose-Driven Life.
Yeah.
You open that book, the first 4 words in that is, it's not about you. I opened that book, read those words, slammed the book shut, couldn't pick it up.
That's probably the ultimate simple leadership lesson too, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
And you're correct, I don't like it.
Yeah. It's not about you.
You know what? I read that long enough ago. I'll probably need to revisit that one because so many things have changed. My outlook on the world, my maturity. I probably need to read that one again.
And I like. There's a little book that Bishop Reuben Job wrote. He's a bishop in the United Methodist Church, and it's called 3 Simple Rules. And the little book is about this big. And the 3 simple rules that he says for life are: do no harm, do good, stay in love with God. Now, beyond that, I like, I read a lot for work, for the things that I do, trying to keep up on concepts and theories. But I love fiction.
Okay.
I like psychological thrillers. I like true crime stories. You ought to see my TV viewing. I like a woman named Carolyn Brown. I listen to her in the car because she writes these funny people relationship books. Patterson, Grisham. Yeah. Those are some of my favorites.
Yeah, you and my wife are on the same
same
path on that stuff. And just to remind you that it was a recent book. Okay. Yeah, I'm a big podcast guy too. Like Patrick Lencioni has a great weekly podcast too, leadership and business podcast.
His stuff is good.
Yeah, really. Yeah, I am a big fan of his.
So he asked me for a book.
Sorry, I can't.
The Bible, of course, but
so. Well, you know what? That's one we can't. Yeah, that's
always.
Yeah, I would. I think somebody said something about that when I said, "Well, you can't answer that. You got to give me something different," because that's too obvious. All right, so listen, I appreciate you indulging us on some of those Gaston County questions. So a couple more questions, Jennifer, and we'll wrap this episode up. So again, remembering this is, and you've already shared a couple answers to this as we've been talking, but remember this is a podcast about Gaston County, why we think Gaston County rich. So from your perspective, what would you say why Gaston County is such a great place?
So a couple of things. I think first of all, it's small enough that you can get around in it and greet people in different places and have time to have conversations. So I like the size of the county. It's not too big and it's not too small, and it's in proximity to a lot of good things.
Sure it is,
so the
yeah.
location is but there's some great people here.
Yeah.
And there's some really, really good people here who I would like to see be bolder in some of their thoughts and sharing with this community, because you're going to find common minds, and we're going to grow more and faster in that way, pulling those common minds together.
Yeah, that's why I like, you made the comment. I think the first time I ever heard it was, I think, from Stephen Covey. You made the comment about listening to understand as opposed to listening to respond. Yeah, that one concept, or if you can, learn that skill, so many great things come after that, in my opinion. So much understanding, right, as opposed to, like I said, I was such a bad salesman because I wanted to answer. I've got the answer to solve your problem. Will you stop talking so I can tell you?
Oh, yeah,
And I miss so many things, right, because of that outlook and attitude. So I appreciate that. Again, I think Naomi gets tired of me saying this every episode. It's my favorite question. So Jennifer, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
My 20-year-old self, I would say be patient. Be patient with yourself. Because, and I think I did. I think I unintentionally gave myself that advice. Be patient with yourself, because you got to learn. You don't know what you don't know. So be patient with yourself.
It seems like when we're young, we want things to happen so quickly. It'll be better when I'm older or whatever. You won't, it's just, and I think I've said more than once when people are talking about this question, more than once I've talked about perspective. And unfortunately, I'm afraid it takes experience and time to gain perspective. It's almost impossible. Like I can't imagine my 20-year-old self ever having the perspective that I wished I had. I just don't think it's possible. So, yeah, and patience is something I didn't have at 20.
I got patience.
Yeah.
Don't pray for it. You don't get patience. Joyce Meyer says you don't get patience in a prayer line.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting.
No, you don't know what you don't know. So just be patient with yourself.
Yeah.
And pay attention.
You think that in your experience with what you do you think that patience, because of the world we live in now with so much information at our fingertips, has that changed and gotten a little worse? I don't know, worse is the right way to phrase it, but the patience to learn things, because so many other things we can just get in a split second almost.
We live in that microwave society where everything is instant. But here's the other thing I would share with you. I tell people all the time, there are three things that drive change, and they're never going to change. And you can remember it if you remember the word pit or you remember the word tip. It's people, it's information, it's technology. They're never going to change.
Yeah.
8 billion people on the planet, more than was predicted. Information, each of us, the last research I saw, each of us takes in in 13 months, our information doubles.
Yeah.
And the technology is changing faster than we can keep up with. If you got a smartphone around somewhere, it's changing right now.
Yeah. Well, we were at a conference 2 weeks ago, and a third of the conference was about AI, and that is a whole nother level of technology in my view, even in our industry. But it's going to impact. I shouldn't say it's going to. It's already.
It is
impacting.
And it has no controls.
So many things. Yeah, it's an interesting. To put it as calmly as I can, it's interesting.
Yeah.
and I'll leave it at that, because we don't even know what's going on with it.
It's a little scary.
Yeah. So Jennifer, this has really been great. I think I'm not afraid, but I think you and I could talk about these type of topics for another few hours. So where can, I'll give you the opportunity. We talked about what you do, but let's get intentional and specific about where can people go, where can a listener go to learn more about your company, what you do. It's a great website. Just anything you'd like to share there?
Well, you can go to the website, and if you go to the website, you can find where to contact me. And
what is the website?
It's JP Davis. It's the www thing.
Yeah.
JP Davis, my name, online.com.
Yeah.
JP
and
Davis
Frank,
online.
if you just, all I did was, I didn't know that all. I knew the name of the company, but I didn't know the website. I just put in Jennifer Davis Gastonia, and it came right up.
Oh, and if you put in
Google, yeah. If
you put my name in Google, my whole name, Jennifer Farr Davis, you're going to get a white woman that's a mountain climber. That ain't me.
That's funny. I didn't do that. So.
Oh, there is a woman who has the exact same name that I
Wow.
do. She lives in Asheville. Her name is Jennifer Farr Davis. And I thought, my nephew called me one day and he said, I didn't know you were climbing mountains. Where
That's
were
interesting.
you looking at? Oh, I thought it was too.
Yeah, that's unique enough middle name there that you would think
Exactly.
that would be put together.
Exactly.
All right. So this has been good. One last quick question: what would you say to somebody who's listening? How would you encourage them, or what would you say to them who they're feeling that tug to get more involved in the community, or something you've said has triggered them to say, "Man, that is something that I want to learn more about." But what would you say to them? If they're kind of, because sometimes you're like, "What can I do?" And if you're not plugged in, so to speak, like I've been so fortunate to be able to get plugged in through our company and church. That, in the beginning it was difficult, frankly, but I had somebody like invite me to Rotary. I had somebody invite me to be on this board. I had somebody invite me that I was, interacting with. But somebody out there might not have that. How would you encourage them to?
Well, I would tell people to identify an organization or an individual that, because everybody is noticing somebody. Identify an organization or an individual and ask them the question, how can I get more involved? And if that's me, that's fine. You can shoot me an email or a text or something like that. But go when it's possible, go to those places or those meetings. Some of them are very public that you can sit in on. But for instance, if you are interested in Rotary, hey, call Stephen Long.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How do I get connected to Rotary?
Yeah.
If you're interested in any other organization, the Community Foundation has tentacles all over the
sure it
place.
Does.
You can get in the community run, which I'm not going to do. Lots of pastors in this area who have all kinds of connections and are willing to do that. Dwayne Burks is the greatest connector I know.
Yeah. Yeah, so she's mentioned Dwayne Burks a couple of times. Dwayne was also a guest on a few episodes ago. And frankly, this wasn't planned when we started this podcast, but we've kind of gathered 123 episodes now of organizations and individuals and contact information on so many organizations and people around Gaston County who are doing good work. So this could even be a place to send somebody to go find out and just scroll through the episodes and easily
Exactly.
find that out. Again, that wasn't the intent. Of course, I think at the time when we started this, we said, well, we'll do 5 or 10 episodes and see what happens. Am I going to listen to this?
No.
Probably not. But here we are, 3 years later, and we're still doing it, and we're getting ready to close out a new season, and we've already got some scheduled to start again. So, again, I appreciate that, Jerry. Any last words of wisdom or anything to share before we close this episode out?
I would say this is something my brother always said to me, and this is one of the things that I think we have to do for ourselves. Always be good to yourself.
Okay.
Be good to yourself. Take care of you.
Yeah.
So you can take care of somebody.
That's a good one. I love that analogy or metaphor about the airplane in the airplane and the the oxygen mask drops down, and what they tell you, put it on yourself first so you can help the people around you.
Exactly.
And that's a simple one, but that's true. You can't do good for anyone else if you're not taking care of yourself. Absolutely.
Physically, mentally, and emotionally.
Absolutely.
Thank y'all. I've had such a great
really
time
good.
here today.
So I'm going to do what I normally do. I think the last couple of episodes I didn't actually share a book recommendation or a thought for the week, but I'm going to do it this week. I just read one finished it maybe within the last month or two, called When Breath Becomes Air. It's by a doctor named, I'm probably going to butcher his last name, but Dr. Paul Kalanithi. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that properly, but this was recommended to me by another community servant that I know well, and it's just a good read. It's about a doctor who is a neurosurgeon who finds out he has terminal cancer, and so it's an interesting read because he documents some part of that journey. And then I did pick this thought on purpose for our, knowing who we were going to be talking to this week, and it's kind of on setting a true example, or I like to say walking the talk, and it's from Norman Vincent Peale, who's kind of known as one of the positive guys. He's got a great book, The Power of Positive Thinking. Thank you. I about forgot what that was, but he said, "Nothing is more confusing than people who give good advice but set a bad example."
Ooh.
Yeah, that's a good one, isn't it? Kind of what we're talking about is people are watching more than they're listening. It's a similar one, but that one struck me when I read that, because GSM also that probably gets sick of me sending out quotes and all that stuff every week here too as well. So, but yeah, think about that one. That's a pretty good one, I thought, especially coming from somebody like Norman Vincent Peale. It's almost the one you wouldn't think. Well, you probably thought I was going to throw out some positivity quote from him, but no. So to our listeners out there, thanks so much for taking time to listen to today's episode. Please continue to spread the word if you can about the podcast, and please don't hesitate to contact us here at our email address, which is podcast@gastonsgreat.com. We're always looking for suggestions for future podcast topics and guests. You can find the podcast and subscribe at the website, gastonsgreat.com, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And please follow us on all our social media platforms and give us a good 5-star rating. As Naomi reminds us, it helps the podcast get noticed. We'll probably get a couple 6 stars for this episode. Thanks again to Jennifer Davis for being our guest today. Gaston's Great is produced and brought to you by Naomi Hunt and Amy Anderson from GSM Services. I'm your host, Stephen Long. Thanks again for hanging out with us, and please keep coming back to hear more reasons why Gaston's great.